Hare Krishna. I'd like to welcome all of you all to today's Bhagavatam class. I am very sorry for the delay. I was stuck in an airport. I had no idea how I'm going to reach on time, but somehow Krishna managed to clear out everything and I reached exactly on time. Of course, 15 minutes late. So today we are going to study the ninth chapter of the second canto of Bhagavatam, which is a very, very beautiful and a very important chapter. And this chapter holds within it the Chatus Shloki bhagavatam, in which the entire Bhagavatam is explained in 4 shlokas. So that's essentially what the ninth chapter, the most important part of it. So today my plan is to do the Chatus Shloki bhagavatam in a particular sequence and in a particular style. Probably the next week, I might do the Chatus Shloki bhagavatam one more time, but in a totally different style. So we will have like two versions of the Chatus Shloki bhagavatam so that your understanding of Chatus Shloki bhagavatam goes deeper and you understand more angles of looking at the same Chatus Shloki bhagavatam. So this chapter starts with Shukadeva Goswami talking to Parikshit Maharaj. And if you all remember, this is a conversation between Brahma and Narad Muni, which Shukadeva Goswami is telling Parikshit. So it's a conversation within a conversation, basically. So the conversation between Brahma and Narad Muni is that Narad Muni is asking Brahma about creation, and he wants to know all the details about creation. And while Brahma is asking Narad Muni about all the details of creation, Brahma goes on to explain about his own life and his own birth. And that's what this particular chapter is about, where Brahma is himself talking about his own creation and then how he got empowered to create the world. So, in this, we find that Shukadeva Goswami talks to Parikshit Maharaj about how Krishna was, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was pleased with Lord Brahma. And he was so pleased with Lord Brahma because of the non deceptive penance in Bhakti Yoga that he did. So, this word non deceptive penance is a very interesting word because it shows that Brahma spoke or rather did penance which was very, very powerful and pure. And because Brahma did such pure penance, he got the fortune of associating or rather experiencing Lord Vishnu face to face. So it is explained that when Lord Brahma was born, he was born on a lotus flower. And Brahma was the first entity to be born. When he was born on this lotus flower, he the lotus flower was on a huge stem. The stem of the lotus flower on which Brahma was born was so huge and Herculean, massive in size, gigantic in size, that practically inside that stem of Lord Brahma, or the stem of the lotus on which Brahma was born, the entire creation exists. So all of us, we exist within that stem of Lord Brahma. That's why this whole stem cell theory is very important because it solves everything. Everything in creation starts with stem only, basically. We all are inside one stem, essentially. So Brahmaji was born on the lotus flower, and he was the only person that existed in the universe at that point in time. And because he was the only person that existed everywhere around, there was darkness. Nothing was created. Even the sun was not created. So where is there going to be light? Nothing was created. So pure darkness, and the ocean was, the waves of the ocean were hitting the lotus stem. Now you can imagine if there's an ocean. First of all, a lotus growing on ocean we have never heard of, right? Here is a lotus that is growing on an ocean, and the lotus is so gigantic that practically all the 14 planetary systems are inside it. And on top of that, the water of that ocean is coming and hitting the lotus stem. And Brahma is literally, the stem is moving, the lotus is shaking, and Brahma is totally getting bewildered. There's darkness, and then there is waves, and there is sound of the waves. I don't know how many of you have ever gone to an ocean in the dark. It's not exactly a very nice place to be in unless you are sure that the atmosphere is good. So Brahma was so bewildered that he started roaming around the lotus. It was so huge. You can imagine he was roaming around the lotus. And while he was roaming around the lotus in so much confusion, Brahma heard twice from nearby two syllables that were chanted together. So these two syllables, one syllable was taken from the 16th and the other syllable was taken from the 21st of the alphabets. And together they were tapa. Tapa was the first word that Brahma heard in this world. Tapa. And when he heard that sound, tapa, he heard that sound twice. Tapa, tapa. He was trying to find who made that sound. But no matter how much ever he roamed around, he was not able to find anyone besides himself. And he thought it is best to sit down on the lotus and firmly focus his attention on executing the instruction that he was first given, which is tapasia. And he decided to sit down and undergo tapasia. Brahma underwent tapasya for 1000 years by the calculation of the demigods. These are 1000 celestial years. And after these 1000 years of tapasya, he heard vibrations from the sky. And then he understood that something very powerful is going to happen in his life. This world was created for tapasya. This world was not created for enjoyment. This world was created for tapasya. We mistakenly think that this world is created for enjoyment. But actually, the purpose of the creation is so that we do tapasya. Unfortunately, a lot of people, when they hear this word tapasya, they get a little scared. Because they feel that life is not meant for tapasya. Life is meant for fun. Life is meant for enjoyment. Life is meant for, being blissful. Have you ever heard anybody saying life is meant for tapasya? We always hear there's only one life, enjoy it to the maximum, Nobody ever says there's only one life, do maximum tapasya, We don't hear that. The Bhagavatam very clearly tells the first person who was created in this universe, he is given only one instruction, do tapasya. One time, Ramanujacharya, who was a very, very powerful acharya, he was returning back to Srirangam from a tour. When he was returning back to Srirangam, he entered into the city, but he entered through the beach. So, Srirangam has many entrances. So he entered from the river side. Kaveri river is flowing, and the shore of the Kaveri river, there were a group of young boys playing games. In those days, the kids, the games they would play also would be devotional games. There would be an element of devotion in the games also, basically. So today, there's no element of devotion in the games because the children are not taught only how to play such games. Srila Prabhupada, at one time, he had a dream. He wanted to create toys, Gaur-Nitai toys, so that children grow up playing with these dolls. Nowadays, we find children growing up with playing with Superman and He-Man and Spider-Man and all of those, and they get fascinated by these personalities, right? These personalities don't exist, but the children are growing up with such fascination of these superheroes. So Srila Prabhupada actually wanted to create factories producing Gaur-Nitai toys. I mean, so far nobody has fulfilled that desire of Prabhupada, but it's a very important desire that children have devotional toys to play with, and the toys should be of such high quality. Prabhupada really wanted to produce high quality Gaur-Nitai toys. Anyway, so these children were playing on the shore of the Kaveri river, and what they were doing essentially was they were imitating what was happening in the Srirangam temple. Whatever was happening in the temple, these kids were imitating it on the shore of the ocean, of the river, and they made their own temple of sand. So they made a beautiful temple of Ranganath made of sand. And all the boys had divided among themselves different roles. So different role, one boy was a pujari, one boy was a cook, one boy was a person who transport the prasad. So like that, all boys were doing different roles basically, and they were dressed also accordingly. You know. So one boy, so they were celebrating a very interesting festival, which happens once a year in Srirangam. And while they were celebrating this festival, Ramanujacharya happened to come by. And he was fascinated by these children playing this game. And he just stood there and he was observing these children. And this particular festival was supposed to happen the next day. And Ramanujacharya came all the way back to Srirangam for this festival. And in this festival, what they do is they offer thousands of kilos of one particular item, which is something like a puliogare, something like a brinjal rice, and they offered huge quantity, massive quantity. And that day, nobody in the entire Srirangam town cooks anything at home. Everybody comes to the temple, and directly food from the altar goes and is distributed out. And when this offering is done, the entire altar is filled with this bhoga. And after the offering done, the pujari comes out of the altar. And from the altar itself, he gives the first prasad to Ramanujacharya, who is the head of the whole Sampradaya. And when he comes out, he loudly shouts out, Jiyar, he shouts out. Jiyar is the pontiff, the head of the Sampradaya. And Ramanujacharya comes and puts his hand like this. And he receives the first prasad. And then the entire village, receives prasad. So these boys were doing exactly that. One pujari came out, he's standing outside the altar and he shouted, Jiyar! And suddenly he saw a big hand coming in front. These small kids have small hands, right? And he saw this such a big hand. Then he realized actually Ramanujacharya is standing there. He was waiting for the prasad. And these boys didn't have any prasad. The temple was made of sand. The prasad also was made of sand only. So they had made small cups made of sand and filled it with Kaveri water. That was the prasad they were offering. And on the altar, inside the temple, on the altar, they created a small, altar. And on the altar, they put one stick lying down. And that stick was Ranganath for them, And Ramanujacharya, when he came over there to receive prasad, so this boy didn't know what to do because this is not a part of the game, And they got scared. They didn't know what to do. Ramanujacharya is saying, give me prasad. And this boy took one small cup of clay filled with Kaveri water and he poured that into Ramanujacharya's hands. And Ramanujacharya actually drank it. And all the disciples of Ramanujacharya were totally bewildered. They were telling him that this is, mud, literally mud water. Ramanujacharya said, no, this is a devotional offering and this is prasad. And that stick that Ramanujacharya saw, he considered that to be Ranganath and he offered the obeisances. The disciples were totally bewildered. Ramanujacharya got up and he told his disciples, tomorrow the festival is cancelled. The festival happened today. He considered that particular event that happened on the banks of Kaveri to be the actual festival. So that particular year, the festival didn't happen only. Because Ramanujacharya perceived that festival to have happened there, on the banks of the Kaveri river. And then Ramanujacharya gave them a very interesting understanding of tapasia at this point in time. So Ramanujacharya explained that the word tapas means contemplation. So there are different meanings of the word tapasya. One of the meanings is penance. But tapas also means contemplation. So Brahmaji, when he heard that word tapa, on that lotus leaf, he sat down and he contemplated very intensely on the purpose of his life, on the purpose of creation, on the purpose of his existence. And then he heard the words of Lord Vishnu revealing to him all the Vedas. So for all of us who are trying to practice spiritual life, it is important that we increase the component of tapasya in our lives. Increasing the component of tapasya in our lives means essentially two things. For a lot of people, when the moment we say tapasya, we immediately think about fasting, because we are so annamaya kosh, our mind is so filled with food, all the time we can only think of food only. So the moment we say we will do tapasya, we start fasting. There was no, in the scriptures at least, this is not what tapasya really means. Essentially, what tapasya really means is absorb yourself in contemplation on the Lord. We all do Ekadasi fasting, and how much are we absorbing ourselves? We may be fasting, our body is fasting, but are we really absorbing ourselves? Are we really contemplating? So, if you're not contemplating, we are only doing an external aspect of what tapasya is, but we are forgetting the internal aspect. So, when Lord Brahma did thousand celestial years of such tapasya, at that point in time, Lord Vishnu is so very satisfied with the penance of Lord Brahma that he manifested his personal abode, Vaikuntha, in that place. So, Lord Brahma, in on that lotus, flower, he actually experienced the Vaikuntha planet. He was in the material world, very much inside the material world. But inside the material world, he could experience Vaikuntha. It is explained that Lord Brahma saw in that planet there was no influence of time. There was no influence of the external energy of the Lord. And it is a planet where the inhabitants were described to have a glowing sky bluish complexion. Their eyes resembled lotus flowers. Their dresses were yellow in color. Their bodily features were so attractive. And their age was that of growing youth. And they all had four hands. And they all were nicely decorated with pearl ornaments. And they all appeared to be so effulgent, with garlands around their neck, and wearing earrings. All these people of Vaikuntha were flying in their own airplanes, and they were brilliantly situated. All these airplanes belonged to great Mahatmas, great devotees of the Lord. The ladies were looking so beautiful in their celestial complexions. And the goddess of fortune was engaged in massaging the lotus feet of the Lord. And like this, Brahma experienced the Vaikuntha planet, and he experienced that the entire devotee community, including the Supreme Lord, was engaged over there. So when Brahma saw this, he was so amazed, especially when he saw the beautiful form of the Lord. He was so blissful and happy. The Lord had a beautifully smiling face with an enchanting reddish hue. He was dressed in yellow robes and wore earrings and helmet on his head. He had four hands, and his chest was marked with the lines of the goddess of fortune. And the Lord was seated on a throne, and all different energies were standing around him. Lord Brahma, when he saw the Lord in his full experience, he was so happy. Vaikuntha is not just a place, it's a state of mind, it's a state of consciousness. It is explained that at one point in time, Lord Shiva, he was meditating on one form of the Lord. And this particular deity of the Lord that Lord Shiva was meditating on was known as Rajagopala. This is Krishna in this form. And when Lord Shiva was meditating on this particular deity of Rajagopal, at that time, the Supreme Lord spoke to Lord Shiva, and he asked him, "What do you want?" Lord Shiva told him, "I am looking for the greatest weapon." He said, "What can I do to receive the greatest weapon from you?" Lord Vishnu explained to him that you chant the thousand names of mine, and I'll offer you the greatest weapon. And at that point in time, Lord Shiva began to offer to chant the Vishnu Sahasranam. And while chanting the 1,000 names of Vishnu, with each name he was offering a red flower to the deity of Rajagopal. And at some point, when he reached 999 names, he ran out of flowers. He didn't have a one last flower to offer. So he actually plucked out his nose only and offered to the Lord. So Lord Vishnu was, of course, this is Lord Shiva. This is not an ordinary person. So Lord Vishnu was so pleased with Lord Shiva's devotion that he appeared and he, blessed him and he gave him whatever he wanted. So after that, Lord Shiva asked Rajagopal. He said, "I have a doubt." He said, "Whenever I've tried to worship you, whether I worship you on earth, whether I worship you in some temple, or whether I worship you, singing praises, every time I worship you, some obstacle or some problem comes. Some, obstacle come on the way." So, of course, Lord Shiva was asking on our behalf. He was not asking, he doesn't have any problem, obviously. So, he's asking on our behalf. So, whenever we try to do anything spiritual, some problem or other comes, isn't it? Either we have laziness that comes sometimes, or we have some disease that comes, or we have some excuse that comes, some calamity that comes, something or other comes. Whatever we decide we want to do in our spiritual life, we never end up doing it, right? So Lord Shiva wanted to know how come the people of Vaikuntha, the spiritual world, they don't have any problems in worshipping you. They don't come across any obstacles while worshipping you. And they are able to worship you without any obstacles. And Lord Vishnu gave a very beautiful answer. He said that the reason all the Vaikuntha Vasis are able to worship me without any obstacles is because I have given them divine vision. Because I have given them divine vision, they are able to worship me constantly without any obstacles. One of the names of the Lord, he is called as Pundarikaksha. The word Pundarikaksha, Aksha means eyes. Pundarikaksha means the one who is blessed with eyes that enjoy only good things. Pundarikaksha also means the one who blesses us with eyes that can see only good things. The difference between the Vaikuntha Loka and the material world is that in the material world, people use their eyes to find faults with one another. We're constantly using eyes to find faults with one another. And in the spiritual world, they have divine vision. They don't find faults with one another at all. And because they don't use their eyes to find faults with one another, they are able to constantly practice spiritual life without any obstacles. The problem with us is that because we have eyes that keep seeing faults in somebody or the other, keep seeing faults in one another, therefore we constantly face obstacles in our spiritual journeys. Therefore, Brahma, when he saw the Vaikuntha Vasis, he was so amazed because he saw all of them perform such incredible devotional service and they pleased the Lord so much. So, when Lord Vishnu saw Brahma present before him, he was so pleased with Lord Brahma that he told him, he expressed some very beautiful words blessing Lord Brahma. He said, "I am very much pleased with your long accumulated penances with the desire for creation." And um, he says, "I wish you good luck. You may ask from me any benediction, anything that you want. Just ask me. But you should know that the ultimate benediction is which is the result of all penances, is to see me. And since you have seen me, you already have got the ultimate benediction. But still, since you are there in front of me, ask me something." And Lord Vishnu, at this point, he speaks two verses that glorify the importance of penance in our life. He says, the highest perfectional aspect in life is penance. And he tells Lord Brahma, you have been able to see me, who is the goal of all penances, because of the severe penances that you have undergone. And then Lord Vishnu speaks this very beautiful verse. He says, Pratyadistam maya tatra tvai karma vimohite tapo me hridayam sakshad atmaham tapaso naga. He says, O Brahma, you may know from me that it was I who ordered you to undergo tapasya. Such penance is my heart and soul, and therefore penance and I are non different. Look at this. Tapo me hridayam sakshad. He says, penance is my heart, literally. And atmaham taposo naga. He says, I and penance am not different. He says, Lord Vishnu is saying, I create this cosmos by such penance, I maintain it by penance, and I withdraw it also by penance. And therefore, there is great potency in penance. Now, when we hear this verse, when we hear such powerful verses about the importance of tapasya, it must inspire us to think about some tapasya that we want to undergo in our lives so that we please the Lord. Look at the Lord, what He's saying. There is no difference. My heart is tapasya, my heart is penance. Now, what can we do in our own lives, in our own spiritual journeys, that we please the Lord? Now, obviously, it has to be a penance that also helps us develop contemplation. Because we already saw one of the meanings of the word penance is contemplation. It is also something that must inconvenience us a little bit. Penance that does not cause any inconvenience, it cannot be penance at all, isn't it? It's just, fun. Any kind of penance has to give us some level of inconvenience. Like, any kind of charity, it has to pinch you. If charity does not pinch you, it's not charity at all. If a billionaire gives 10,000 rupees, it's not charity at all. If somebody who has 1 lakh gives 1 rupee, it is not charity at all. So when somebody has a lot and gives, it has to pinch. And when it pinches, that's when it is charity. Similarly, penance, it has to cause some inconvenience, some pain. When it causes some inconvenience and pain, then it becomes penance. But that inconvenience and pain is not without contemplation. The charity that you give, which causes you a little pinch, a little pain, it cannot be without contemplation. So spiritual life is centered around contemplation. It's centered around why you're doing what you're doing. And when we think about that, that's when you get the full fruit of it. There was one elephant whose name was Pashubadantan. Danta means tusk, right? Sorry, Pushpadantan. Pushpadantan means the one whose tusk is like a lotus. Very interesting name, right? So this elephant, he once offered great prayers to Parvati Devi, and he really very intensely worshipped Parvati Devi, and Parvati Devi, came and blessed Pushpadantan, this elephant, and she asked him, "What happened? What do you want? Why are you doing so much intense tapasya?" So this elephant explained that in his last life, he was a Shiva Gana. His name was also Pushpadantan in his last life. And in his last life, as a Shiva Gana, he had a fight with one more Shiva Gana, whose name was Malyavan. So the Malyavan and Pushpadantan, they became bitter enemies of each other. And somehow um, they died. This Malyavan, in his next life, he was born as a great king. So this Malyavan in his previous life was a spider. And this Pushpadantan was an elephant only in his previous life. But in next life, this Pushpadantan again was born as elephant only, but the spider became a king in his next life. And the spider became a very powerful king. But somehow he remembered in his previous life, this elephant had killed me. And he built so many temples of Lord Shiva. He built almost something like about 91 temples of Lord Shiva. But in all those 91 temples of Lord Shiva, he built the temples in such a way that he created a step system called Mani Madam. Mani Madam, the way the step system in these 91 temples was created is that all other entities can go inside the temple except elephant. The steps were not at all conducive for elephant to walk on. He devised a new step system called Mani Madam only so that elephants don't come inside the temple. So this elephant was feeling very bad because he was a great devotee of Lord Shiva and he wanted to go to all these 91 temples. And he never got to go to any one temple also because the step system was like that. So this Pushpadantan, he prayed to Parvati Devi, please somehow let me have darshan. I am really eager to have darshan of the Lord. And he created so many temples that I can't even enter one of the temples. Parvati Devi told, this elephant, he said, don't worry. I will bless you that you will eventually have darshan. And then Parvati Devi, she made a request to Lord Shiva to bless this elephant. Lord Shiva told her, don't worry, we'll take care. Now, Shiva didn't tell how. The next day, Parvati Devi saw something fascinating. What she saw was that the deity had come out of the temple. And the deity was sitting on this elephant and going on a procession around the temple. So now that elephant can't go inside the temple because the steps are like that, So the deity came outside the temple to give darshan to this elephant. So the idea of tapasya means thought. The Supreme Lord is always thinking, the Supreme Lord and his devotees are always thinking how to bless their servant. Because they are constantly thinking how to bless their servant, they are in this constant mood of contemplation on blessing and facilitating the desires of their servants. So tapasya from our point of view means that I contemplate and I take some voluntary inconvenience to please the Lord. But the tapasya from the Lord's point of view is that the Lord is constantly thinking how he can bless his devotees. So there's tapasya on both sides. So Lord Vishnu is telling Lord Brahma, I created the world by tapasya. So what is the meaning of he created the world by tapasya? What is his tapasya? His tapasya is his contemplation on how to bless all of us. So the way the material world is created is that this material world is created in such a way that you can use all the facilities in this material world to perfect your life. So the entire creation of the Lord is created in such a way that we can use all the facilities to perfect our lives. So if you actually see, every single aspect of creation is created in that way only. The waters are created so that we are not thirsty while doing tapasya. The fruits and trees, all of that is created so that we don't face inconveniences while sitting under the trees and doing tapasya. The fruits are created in such a way that when we feel hungry while doing tapasya, the fruits are available. The land is created in such a way that when we feel sleepy while doing tapasya, the land is available. Practically every aspect of creation is created in such a way that we can do tapasya nicely. So the Lord's contemplation is that he is contemplating what he can do best to facilitate us in doing our tapasya without any problems. And that is the Lord's tapasya. So Lord Brahma, he was so happy hearing the Lord speak like this on the power of tapasya. And Lord Brahma now starts speaking his heart. He says, my dear Lord, I pray to you to kindly fulfill my desire. He says first that you're already aware of everything that I am going to speak to you. But I'm expressing my desire. He says, um, he asks several questions. Brahma is essentially asking four questions here. And the answers to those four questions are what the subject of the Chatus Shloki bhagavatam is all about. So he says, first, he asks the Supreme Lord, kindly describe your material and spiritual form. And then he says, how are all your energies working? And then he says, where all are you present? And the fourth thing he says, how do I get your mercy? So these are four questions that Brahma asks. And Lord Vishnu answers each of the questions of Lord Brahma in the form of these four verses, which form the Chatus Shloki bhagavatam. The first verse, Lord Vishnu says, Aham evasam evagre nanyat yat sat asat param paschadaham yad etakcha yo vashishyeta so asmyaham. He says, it is I, the personality of Godhead, who was existing before creation when there was nothing but myself. Nor was there material nature, the cause of this creation. That which you see now is also I, the personality of Godhead. And after annihilation, what remains will also be I, the personality of Godhead. So essentially, the Lord says, I alone exist in this world. The fact is that the Supreme Lord, He is existing in so many ways. Practically, the entire material world is supported by the Supreme Lord. It is explained the whole creation, it is built within that lotus stem, isn't it? That lotus stem itself is within a egg, which is called Brahmanda. And that egg is on the head of Anantashesh. And Anantashesh is on the body of Kurmadev. And Kurmadev is supporting the whole universe on his back. So we feel that Anantashesh is holding everything on his head, but actually Anantashesh is on Kurmadev's back. And Anantashesh is holding the universe on his head. And technically all of us are literally sitting on the head of Anantashesh. When we say that we are sitting on the head of God, literally. It's like not figuratively, it's actually literally like that. So Lord Vishnu is telling Brahmaji that I alone exist. I support the universe. I support the universe not only from externally but from internally also. That's what the next series of verses is going to be about. So so he says, describe your material and spiritual form. He answers this question by saying, I alone exist. That means there's nothing called material and there's nothing called spiritual. Everything is him only, isn't it? When we say this is matter and this is spirit, actually that's a wrong way of looking at it, because everything is God's, creation only, right? In science, we hear this whole theory that matter can never be created or destroyed. It can only change from one form to another, isn't it? Energy can never be created or destroyed. It can only be changed from one form to another. So technically, in this world, nothing gets created. It's only changed from one form to another. So all the technology, all that we create, is simply changing from one form to another. That's all. Lord Vishnu, he answers the next question of Brahma. How are your energies working? By the second verse. Rite artam yat pratiyeta na pratiyeta chatmani tad vidyad atmano mayam yatha bhaso yata tamaha. O Brahma, whatever appears to be of any value, if it is without relationship to me, has no reality. Know it as my illusory energy, that reflection which appears to be in darkness. So it is explained. So Lord Vishnu is trying to tell Brahma over here that anything that is connected to me is real and anything that is not connected to me is false. One time, um, Ramanujacharya, he was speaking to Ranganath and he was taking blessings of the Supreme Lord. And the Supreme Lord, Ranganath, told Ramanujacharya that I bestow on you supreme wisdom and all your previous deeds are burnt up like fire. And I bestow on you pure devotion. And at the end of this life, you will reach Vaikuntha, the spiritual world. When Ramanujacharya heard this, he said, I can't wait for so long. I have to wait till the end of my life to reach Vaikuntha. He says, it's too late. I can't. My mind is already yearning to reach you. I can't wait for so long. So the Supreme Lord was very confused when he heard this. Usually somebody gives you a guarantee you're going to reach spiritual world at the end of your life. It's such a blissful thing, right? You feel so good that somebody is telling you you'll reach the spiritual world. And what to speak of the Supreme Lord only telling you that you're going to reach Vaikuntha after this world. But Ramanujacharya was not satisfied. He said, I have to wait too long for that. So then the Supreme Lord said that I will create a place for you that is as good as Vaikuntha. And that place, if you practice your spiritual life, it is as good as being in Vaikuntha now while you're alive. So from that time onwards, it is explained, Srirangam Dham came to be known as Vaikuntha in the material world. So practically, if anybody resides in Srirangam, it is as good as residing in the spiritual world. So for a devotee, the way the Supreme Lord orchestrates things is that he facilitates the perfection of his devotees at the end of life, but he also facilitates the entire life of the devotee. So here, when the Supreme Lord is saying that everything that is connected to me is reality, and if it is not connected to me, it is illusion. What does it mean? It means that whatever we do in our life, if we can somehow or the other connect it to the Supreme Lord, that is perfection. And that is a reality. And if we cannot find any connection to the Supreme Lord, that is false. That is illusion. So all of us, we have to use this sutra now in trying to connect everything we do to the Supreme Lord. Now, whatever business you may do, see if you can find a connection to the Lord. You might go for a morning walk. See if you can find some connection to the Lord in that morning walk. You can go for a morning walk. Maybe you can chant some extra rounds. Maybe you can, think of some verses of Gita, or maybe you can, hear some kirtans or some katha. You're driving a car. Try to connect that with Krishna. You can hear some, lectures while you're driving a car. You're cooking. See if you can connect that with Krishna, thinking that what will if I cook, we can offer it to the Lord and make it really exciting for the Lord. I remember the initial days of Krishna consciousness. We just started practicing spiritual life. When we understood this idea of bhoga, offering to the Lord, it was so exciting because we, for the first time, felt we're actually going to offer Krishna something. And every day everybody started cooking. Of course, over a period of time, that excitement goes away and it becomes routine and mundane. But imagine, if you can just keep that excitement on for our entire lifetime, thinking that, I'm trying to cook something special for the Lord. So anything that we do in our life, whether it is mundane stuff or anything that is, routine stuff also, or even our work, if we can find some Krishna element in it, if we can find some way to connect Krishna in it, if we can find some way to bring Krishna into it, that becomes reality. And if we are not able to bring Krishna into it, it is illusion. There will be some activities in our life that we cannot bring Krishna into it at all. Those activities are the illusory activities of our life. And those activities in which we can bring Krishna somehow or the other, we just have to tax our brains how to bring Krishna into it. If we tax our brains, we will definitely be able to bring an element of Krishna into it. And that is how we can make everything while we are alive in this world as a devotional service. Um, Brahma asks the third question, where are you present? And Lord Vishnu answers the third question by saying, Yata mahanti bhutani bhuteshu chavacheshvanu pravistani aparavistani तथा तेषु न तेष्वहम्. O Brahma, please know that the universal elements enter into the cosmos and at the same time do not enter into the cosmos. Similarly, I myself also exist within everything created and at the same time I am outside of everything. So Brahma is asking, where are you present? He says, I am inside and outside. When Markandeya Rishi was offering great penance to please Naranarayan Rishi, finally Naranarayan Rishis appeared in front of Markandeya Rishi and they said, we are very pleased with your penance. What boon do you want? Markandeya Rishi said, just seeing you is the greatest boon. I don't want any other boon. But he said, since you want to give a boon, I'm asking for a boon. He says, everybody praises you as a protective deity. So he says, what is your power? What is the power by which you save everyone? And how do you save everybody's lives? I want to see that. Lord Narayan told him, I will show you when time comes. So then many years passed, many yugas passed actually. Markandeya Rishi didn't get answer to his question. But after many yugas passed, there was a devastation that took place, universal devastation. And the entire universe was massively flooded. And Markandeya Rishi found himself floating in that flood and he had no idea what to do. He was just roaming around in that flood, being tossed by waves. And in that flood, he saw that there was a small little boy lying on a small leaf. And he saw that this little boy had taken his lotus feet and put the toe of that feet into his mouth. And he was sucking on his own toe. Essentially, he was telling Markandeya Rishi, take shelter of my lotus feet. In such a situation of life, nothing else can help you except my lotus feet. And it's amazing how the Lord sucks his own lotus feet. It's amazing, isn't it? The Lord is sucking his own lotus feet, indicating that there are many temples around India. If you actually see very carefully, there are some temples where the Lord is actually telling us that. There's one temple where the Lord is one hand is showing this, and in his hand is written Mam Ekam Sharanam Braja. And at the same time, with the other hand, he is showing it to his lotus feet. He's showing his other hand to his feet. He's telling us he's giving us a suggestion, do this, and he's telling us the means also, by taking shelter of my lotus feet. And Markandeya Rishi, when he saw the lotus feet of the Lord and the Lord is sucking the lotus feet, he was just so fascinated by the beauty of this little child. And as Markandeya Rishi was fascinated by the beauty of this little child, the child opened his mouth and sucked Markandeya Rishi into his mouth. And Markandeya Rishi went into the body of the Supreme Lord. And inside the body of the Supreme Lord, he was roaming around. And there was unlimited space inside the body of the Supreme Lord. He was roaming around within universes, one universe after another, he was roaming around inside the body of the Supreme Lord. And Markandeya Rishi was totally bewildered. And that's when Markandeya Rishi understood how the Lord saves us. The time of dissolution, which is supposed to be the biggest calamity in the universe, the Lord takes all of us inside His body. So that means each and every one of us have been inside the body of the Lord for some time at least. We've all been inside the body of the Lord. So technically, all of us are such exalted souls, to be inside the body of the Lord. Imagine that. Markandeya Rishi was inside the body of the Lord, but we are nothing compared to Markandeya Rishi. But even we have been inside the body of the Lord at some point of time or the other. And that is how much the Lord cares for us. So that means no matter who you are, we are inside the body of the Lord in a state of sleep. This is known as susupti. This is a state of sleep that we are all inside the body of the Lord. And when we are when it's time for creation, Brahma is produced first, and then he creates the universe. He creates all these prototypes of bodies and all that, and then the Lord releases all the living entities, and all the living entities get all these different forms, the different bodies. And it's not as if it's not that Brahma is actually creating us. Brahma is only creating the bodies. And all of us, the living entities, the Atmas, are all inside the body of the Supreme Lord. When He breathes out, we all get a chance to go back again and have bodies and live in this material world. One time, when the Pandavas had completed their 12 years of exile and the 1 year of Agyatwas, after 13 years also, Duryodhan, he refused to give back the kingdom. So, and then Duryodhan sends Sanjay as a messenger to meet the Pandavas. So Sanjay comes to Yudhishthir Maharaj and he meets him. And he tells Yudhishthir Maharaj, you are a very meek person. Fighting is not your nature at all. So he says, don't fight. Sanjay is trying to explain to Yudhishthir Maharaj, forget it, don't fight with these people. These people won't understand only. Yudhishthir Maharaj says, Sanjay, we have no interest in fighting. We are only asking for that which is rightfully ours. But by refusing to give us, Duryodhana has provoked the war. And what can we do? Bhima, he says at that point in time, we don't want the full kingdom back. Just give us 5 villages. We are happy with that also. So all of them were, trying to pacify Sanjay and trying to tell Sanjay to convince Dhritarashtra and Yudhishthir and Duryodhana to give at least 5 kingdoms back. So finally, after all the discussion is over, Sanjay decides to go back. And before he leaves, Sanjay is searching for Arjun and Krishna. And then he's told that Arjun and Krishna are inside a room. They are having a discussion privately. We're not allowed to go there. So Yudhishthira tells him that even if, so Sanjay says, I just want to say farewell to them. I just want to say bye to them. So Sanjay went to Arjun's room and he tried to open the door, but the door was locked from inside. So first, Sahadev, he knocks on the door. And Krishna from inside, he asks him, who is there? So Sahadev says, I'm Sahadev. So Krishna says, we are in a very critical consultation. You come back later. So Sahadev goes. Then Abhimanyu comes. He knocks on the door. Krishna asks him, who is this? And he says, Abhimanyu. He says, he didn't allow him also to enter. Finally, Sanjay himself goes and knocks the door. And Krishna asks him, who is this? He says, I'm Sanjay. He says, I'm leaving. And Krishna says, come in. And Sanjay, he goes inside. And when he comes out, he is a completely transformed person. He goes straight to Dhritarashtra and he tells him, you are sure to lose. Dhritarashtra says, why are you saying we are sure to lose? Sanjay says, you are sure to lose. What I saw in that room, I can confirm to you that you are sure to lose. Dhritarashtra asks him, what did you see inside the room? He says, I saw the most wonderful sight ever. He says, I saw that Krishna was reclining with his head on Satyabhama's lap. And Krishna's feet was on Arjun's lap. And Arjun's feet was on Draupadi's lap. And when I saw just this little scene, Krishna is lying on Satyabhama's lap. His feet is on Arjun's lap. Arjun is lying, and Arjun's feet is on Draupadi's lap. He said, I understood how close Krishna and Arjun are. And he said, after I left from that room, I realized no one can do anything to the Pandavas. Krishna loves them too much. He tells Dhritarashtra, please tell your son Duryodhan, he is unnecessarily trying to fight against something that is impossible. Krishna has made up his mind to support the Pandavas. No one can help you. There are one of the names of the Supreme Lord, he is known as Janu. The word Janu means the one who hides. What does he hide? He hides his glory from those who are evil people, like Duryodhana. So, the Lord is present everywhere. Krishna is saying, oh, yeah, where are you present? He's saying, I'm everywhere. I'm inside also, I'm outside also. But that inside and outside will be experienced only if you are a devotee. Only if you are like Arjun. And of course, that inside and outside is experienced differently by different people. Those who are outside that room, they never saw what Sanjay saw inside. So that what Sanjay got that little experience, glimpse of Arjun and Krishna's intimacy, he realized that this is something else only. There's another battle only going on inside. So the whole idea of the Supreme Lord being inside and outside of everyone means what? He's present everywhere. But not everybody witnesses him, experiences him in the same way. Those who are devotees can experience him in the most amazing way. Everywhere you can see Krishna if you are a devotee. In every one you can see Krishna if you are a devotee. But if you are not a devotee, when you see Krishna also you don't see God there. Duryodhana saw Krishna. He had darshan of Virat Roop, literally. But he didn't experience Krishna there. So Duryodhana saw the Supreme Lord, but still didn't experience the Supreme Lord. Dhritarashtra saw the Supreme Lord, yet didn't experience him. And Sanjay went in. He only saw Krishna lying down on the lap of Satyabhama and putting his leg on Arjun. He experienced Krishna completely. And he realized that this is something else only happening. Lord Brahma asks him the fourth question. How do I get your mercy? And Lord Krishna answers that in a very beautiful way, the fourth verse of the Chatus Shloki Gita. Etad eva jigyasam tattva jigyasu sunatmanah anvaya vyatirekaabhyam yatsyat sarvatra sarvada. The Supreme Lord tells Lord Brahma, a person who is searching after the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, must certainly search for it up to this. In all circumstances, in all space, time, and both directly and indirectly. Lord Vishnu is telling Lord Brahma something very simple. Anyone who wants to get the mercy of the Lord must perform devotional service with full enthusiasm. So, when Krishna is saying um, that perform bhakti, what does it really mean to perform bhakti? One time, Mother Yashoda, she was very angry on Krishna. She was running after Krishna with a stick in her hand. And Krishna ran away from her. And somehow he reached the house of a person who used to sell curd. He was a curd seller, and his name was uh, Dadi Pandan. Dadi means curd. Dadi Pandan means the one who is selling curd. So Krishna reached this house of this Dadi Pandan, and he told him. So he saw there was one big pot which was empty. He went inside that pot, and he sat inside that pot. And this Dadi Pandan coming and seeing Krishna sitting inside his pot, Krishna told him, "See, I'm hiding inside this pot. You cover the pot and tie it up. And if my mother comes, don't tell her I'm here." So this, he was so mesmerized by Krishna's beauty that he actually tied up Krishna's, inside that pot. He put a cloth on it and tied the cloth. It looks like a curd pot. So, after some time, Yashoda Mai comes running and she says, I have been looking for Krishna everywhere Did Krishna come over here? Is he hiding anywhere? So the Dadi Pandan says, no, no, I also have been searching for Krishna for so many days. I have not found him as yet. So, Yashoda tells him, if you find him, please bring him to my house and hand him over to me. So she says, yes, yes. Dadi Pandan says, yes, yes. And then after some time, she leaves. And then Krishna, from inside that pot, he speaks to this fellow. And he asks him, is my mother gone? So, he says, yes, yes, your mother is gone. So then Krishna says, take off this cloth and I want to come out. So this Adipandan opened up the cloth and he, allowed Krishna to come out. But before Krishna actually came out of the pot, he kept his hand on the pot. And he told Krishna, he kept that cloth on. He said, I will let you out if you give me a promise. Whatever I ask, you should give me. So Krishna, by this time, he was like, you're getting a little breathless. So he says, just let me out, let me out. He says, no, first promise me that, you will give me whatever I ask. Then I'll let you out. So he says, yes, I'll give you whatever you ask. So he says that this Dadi Pandan, he says, I want you to grant me mukti, liberation. And not only grant me mukti, I want you to grant mukti to this pot also, along with me. So Krishna says, fine. And then he says, it explained that this Dadi Pandan and his pot reached the spiritual world. When all the residents of Vrindavan, they heard this, they went to Gargacharya and they asked him, in the Vedas it is said, if you perform Bhakti Yoga, you will attain the spiritual world. But how come this Dadi Pandan who never performed Bhakti Yoga, he didn't even know how to perform Bhakti Yoga. And that too, his pot has no capacity also to perform Bhakti Yoga. How come the two of them attained liberation? How they reached the spiritual world? Gargacharya tells, usually the purpose of Bhakti Yoga is to put Krishna in your heart. But these two people put Krishna physically only into that pot, because this Dadi Pandan and his pot gave shelter to Krishna. Dadi Pandan gave shelter to Krishna, in his heart spiritually, but also in that pot physically. Both this fellow and his pot both got liberated, and both of them reached the spiritual world. So here, Lord Krishna is telling us the secret of how to get the mercy of the Lord. The secret of how to get the mercy is to practice Bhakti Yoga. But the real meaning of Bhakti Yoga is to somehow place the Lord within our hearts. In some way or the other, we place Krishna in our hearts. Yes, chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is the easiest way to place Krishna in our hearts. But anyone who has any other way of placing Krishna in their heart, this Dadi Pandan found his own unique way of putting Krishna in his heart, right? He physically only put Krishna inside the pot. So anyone who somehow or the other places Krishna in the heart, that person will get the mercy of the Lord. We don't have to externally go by, whether the person is actually doing this or that. These are all external things. The most important thing is having Krishna in the heart. We may chant 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, but if we don't have Krishna in the heart, we don't put the endeavor to place Krishna in the heart, it is just mechanical in nature. On the other hand, someone may not be chanting at all, but that person is putting every endeavor to put Krishna in the heart, and that person can get the mercy of the Lord. When Brahma shared all this experience of him face to face having exchange with Krishna and hearing the Chatus Shloki bhagavatam from the lotus mouth of Lord Vishnu himself, Narad Muni was fascinated. He was so happy hearing this. And Narad Muni shared this conversation that Brahma had with Lord Vishnu and Vishnu's answer to 4 of Brahma's question with his disciple Vyasdev. And Vyasdev expanded the four answers that Vishnu gave Lord Brahma into these 18,000 verses of the Bhagavatam. And those 18,000 verses of Bhagavatam are being shared by Shukadeva Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj over here in this conversation. So essentially, the Chatus Shloki bhagavatam is just 4 verses. But within that 4 verses is embedded 18,000 verses. So just these 4 verses expanded. See, Bhagavatam is like a cotton. You have seen cotton? You can press the cotton and fit it into a matchbox. But that same cotton, if you slowly thread it, it can become 1 kilometer long thread, isn't it? Same cotton. same amount of cotton. It can go into a matchbox or it can become a long thread. Similarly, Bhagavatam is like that. Chatus Shloki bhagavatam is just 4 verses. It's Bhagavatam in a matchbox. Well, the same Bhagavatam, if you want a year, 3 years, we are going to try struggling to complete Bhagavatam. And it's like, it's Krishna, unlimited. And 3 years also is a very conservative period to actually study the Bhagavatam. We need lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes to study Bhagavatam. And therefore, let us experience our good fortune of studying the Bhagavatam in this way, especially that we have completed the Shloki bhagavatam today. Let us contemplate on this. The next week, we will not be having a class because I'll be just on my way back from Kumbh Mela. But the week after that, we will continue. But we'll do the Chatus Shloki bhagavatam again, one more time. And the next time when I do the Chatus Shloki bhagavatam, it will be a totally different way, a totally different style and context of understanding the Chatus Shloki bhagavatam, and a deeper and a much more different perspective of understanding the Chatus Shloki bhagavatam. So I thought this particular series I must do it twice so that we go deeper into it. And then the week after that will be the last session of the second canto of Bhagavatam. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.